But we got to turn our attention to the recruiting trail because the pursuit of five-star quarterback Dylan Raiola is starting to heat up. He, of course, is not just a five-star prospect. He is the number one quarterback in the class. According to 24/7 Sports, he is the number one overall player in the class, 6'3", 220 pounds, out of Arizona. And we've got a recent crystal ball for Dylan Raiola to USC. This coming on the tails of a USC visit. And the idea that a five-star quarterback would connect with Lincoln Riley seems like, oh yeah, of course, duh. But it sounds like this is just as much about what other programs might be missing out on.
Absolutely. Do we have the video? Because this wasn't just in a crystal ball. I mean, this is Steve Wiltfong, with feeling that USC is in a great spot for Dylan Raiola.
Steve, what are you hearing coming out of Raiola's visit to SoCal that has you changing your pick from Georgia to now USC?
Well, I talked to Dylan Raiola following another visit to USC, and he said it was a blast. Every time I go back, I just love it more and more. And he got a chance to spend time in meetings with Coach Riley and see how he interacts with the whole team, but also getting an opportunity to hang out with Caleb Williams and pick his brain about USC and how he's handled everything was another thing that was exciting for him. But he got to watch a spring practice, hang out with Coach Riley, hang out with Caleb Williams, and I think just as he continues to go through his process here, and he's still trying to get back to Georgia. He's going to visit Nebraska at the end of March. That it's USC that's kind of taken the momentum. Georgia had the momentum coming out of the national championship game, and we'll see if they can get that back with another visit here. And Nebraska certainly doing all they can to get Dylan Raiola to come to Lincoln. But at this point, I like where USC stands in this recruitment.
Yeah, Steve, I think it's interesting because I was looking through the comments and the replies on that Twitter message, right? The post that went out from the 24/7 Sports account. A lot of fans are wondering, why would he go there? Malachi Nelson just signed with the Trojans, the five-star quarterback from Southern California. But then you think about Dylan Raiola, you think about his makeup and his moxie, and I don't think he's shying away from any sort of competition. So I wouldn't expect that to be a hindrance for USC. He knows he has to compete wherever he goes. And that connection with Lincoln Riley is something that gives me a bit of confidence with that crystal ball prediction. I think that whatever he sees in what Riley can do for him as a developer, and then obviously with that offense, all the skill talent that they bring in, it's close to home in Arizona. They're building a new house there in the suburbs outside Phoenix. That would be a driving distance for his family as well. And he trains in Los Angeles at 3D QB out in Orange County. So those are all different layers that I think work in USC's favor.
Yeah, the number one quarterback in the class who was committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes for much of the summer and fall of 2022. On December 17th, he officially decommitted, and that's when Georgia got in the mix. That's when Nebraska got in the mix, and that's when now, yes, as we are sitting here on March 8th, USC does appear to be very much in the mix. What's your big takeaway from these latest developments from the recruiting trail? And again, thank you to the 24/7 recruiting show, college football recruiting show on the 24/7 Sports Network for that clip right there.
Absolutely. It was great to hear from those guys and Emily as well. My take here is, sure, it's great if USC gets Dylan Raiola. He's the number one player in the class. The guy's a stud, right? And I'm sure Ohio State will be fine because it's Ryan Day and quarterbacks, Chip. Like, he's going to get another really good QB. And I think Georgia, before Todd Monken had left, was actually in a really good spot with him. He was in the box with Matt Stafford watching the national championship game. But, I go and I look at the other school that was mentioned there, Nebraska. His uncle, Dominic Raiola, who was a really good player, obviously, for the school and for the Detroit Lions, is the offensive line coach there under new coach Matt Rule. And I would comp this a little bit to what Penn State went through with Justin Fields. Okay. Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, and Kirby Smart have a real chance to sign the number one player in the country every year. Penn State didn't, but they had Justin Fields committed for a whole summer. And that's something you can really dream on. And when you have a special connection with a kid and you're not a top 10, not a top 20 type program like Nebraska has not been, at least during Dylan Raiola's lifetime, you have to cash that in. And like, that is a type of player who could, not necessarily will, but could change the entire trajectory of how your career goes at Nebraska if you're Matt Rule. Like, Penn State hasn't gotten over the hump of winning a national title, of making a deep playoff run. They've had a lot of really good years, but we always ask, hey, if they could ever get quarterback right. They almost had it when they had Justin Fields decommitted, and then he decommitted, went to Georgia and went to Ohio State. I wonder if there's a question here about the coordinator hire, man. They went and they hired Marcus Satterfield, who was at South Carolina. South Carolina's offense this year was a dumpster fire, despite the fact that they got 5-star transfer Spencer Rattler in. And if you're Raiola and you're looking at these, you're like, okay, what's his track record of developing quarterbacks compared to Lincoln Riley or Ryan Day or Georgia, which has 5 stars at almost every position? I think that's probably worth a discussion. I mean, that's a leap of faith if you commit to Satterfield, who is Matt Rule's buddy and has been with him at prior stops. But I don't know. Like, one of these things is not like the other. If you do the song with it, I know I do it with my son. I'm sure you do it with yours, or maybe that was just embarrassing. I just sung on the air. Man, I don't know. Like, this does feel like a missed opportunity if Nebraska can't cash this in.
You tell me if I'm wrong about this, but the sense that I'm getting from the modern day 5-star top of the class quarterback is that they are the franchise, that they should be able to show up and, like, doesn't matter who the coach is. I mean, it probably matters to their parents, to people in their decision-making web, but that if you are the kind, like, for example, the kind of drive that would lead Dylan Raiola to see that Malachi Nelson's already going to be on the roster and say, I don't care. I'm going to step into that. I would think that he would be committing to Nebraska because of that connection, but would also believe that he is going to be the change that can happen. And listen, we've had offensive coordinators who have had their stock boosted in ways that do not tie at all to the exact makeup or coaching grade that we would otherwise apply to an offensive coordinator, just because they've got that dude at quarterback. I think it's a tough sell for Nebraska to be going head to head with USC, with Georgia, who might not be out of the, I mean, like, Mike Bobo is still very much like has his own path to be able to get to Dylan Raiola as well. Like, it's the offensive coordinator hire might play a role for sure, but some of it might just also be the fact that Nebraska is trying to swim in the deep end with 3 massive recruiting powers of the modern football landscape.
I think that's very fair. And normally, like, Nebraska they don't even get in the gate to try to jump in the pool in the deep end, right? Like, that for a level of player this high. So this is going to be one to watch, man. This is a really important recruitment for Matt Rule if you're a Nebraska fan that thinks they can get back to winning a national title. And as you transition, the Big Ten is most likely going to do away with divisions, I would assume, right? And they'll go to a more of a 9-game schedule. You're going to need some big guns when you have to play Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan annually.